How the planet prepared for observers. For most of its history, Earth did not need witnesses. Processes unfolded without record, memory, or meaning. Then the planet began setting the stage for something that could notice. After deep architecture stabilized the surface and atmosphere, Earth entered a quiet phase of preparation. This matters because observers do not emerge from chaos alone. They require long stretches of reliability, where patterns persist long enough to be learned, remembered, and interpreted. Earth was becoming a place where information could survive. The conditions that allow awareness to develop are not merely biological. They are environmental, requiring a planet that holds still long enough for complexity to accumulate and for patterns to become recognizable. Climate cycles slowed into recognizable rhythms. Seasons repeated. Day and night followed predictable lengths. Oceans circulated steadily, distributing heat and nutrients without collapsing into extremes. These repetitions created consistency, the raw material of awareness. Without regularity, there is nothing to learn. Without persistence, there is nothing to remember. The planet's rhythms provided the temporal structure within which memory, in all its forms, could develop. Life responded to this reliability by increasing complexity. Organisms no longer needed to survive only moment to moment. They could invest in memory, structure, and interaction. Ecosystems deepened, layered with feedback and specialization. The planet was not just supporting life. It was shaping how life processed time. Biological clocks emerged, synchronized the planetary rhythms. Behavioral patterns formed around seasonal cycles. The relationship between life and environment became increasingly sophisticated, with organisms not just surviving within patterns, but anticipating them. Geography played its role as well. Stable continents created long-lived habitats where evolutionary experiments could unfold without constant reset. Rivers returned to the same paths. Coastlines shifted slowly. Landscapes became readable, turning the surface into information rather than noise. The persistence of geographical features allowed ecological communities to develop depth and complexity, as species adapted not just conditions but to places, building relationships with landscapes that endured across evolutionary timescales. This was not intention or destiny. It was consequence. A planet that learned patience, balance, and structure inevitably created conditions where observation became possible. Earth did not plan for witnesses. The preparation was emergent, the natural result of systems that had been stabilizing for billions of years, finally reaching a state where their own regularity could be perceived by something living within them. It prepared for them by surviving long enough, and soon something would begin looking back. As these conditions persisted, information began accumulating in ways that had never been possible before. Patterns repeated long enough to be learned, not just by life, but by ecosystems as a whole. Seasonal cycles influence behavior, migration, and growth, embedding time into biology itself. The planet was teaching its inhabitants how to anticipate rather than merely react. Anticipation requires a stable enough environment that past experience reliably predicts future conditions, and Earth had finally achieved that stability. Energy flows became predictable. Sunlight arrived in steady rhythms, filtered through an atmosphere that no longer shifted wildly. Food webs stabilized, allowing relationships to form across generations instead of collapsing after brief success. Life could afford complexity because the environment no longer punished it for existing too long. The cost of complexity, which includes metabolic overhead, developmental time, and ecological interdependence, could only be sustained in an environment where returns on that investment were not erased by sudden disruption. This predictability also reshaped evolution's priorities. Traits that favored memory, communication, and coordination gained value. Survival was no longer only about endurance against extremes, but about navigating patterns that repeated reliably. Earth was quietly rewarding awareness. Organisms that could detect, store, and act upon environmental information gained advantages over those that could only respond to immediate stimuli. The selective pressure toward more sophisticated information processing was not imposed by any single event. It was embedded in the planet's reliability. Even the planet's dangers became legible. Storms followed seasons. Climate oscillated within bounds. Geological hazards occurred in recognizable zones. Risks did not disappear, but became localized and learnable. A world that can be understood is a world that can be inhabited deeply. The legibility of danger allowed organisms to develop avoidance strategies, risk assessments, and adaptive behaviors that would have been impossible in a less predictable environment. The build-up toward observers was not marked by a single breakthrough, but by accumulation. Every stable cycle, every repeated pattern, every long-lived habitat added another layer of context. Earth was becoming a place where experience could matter. The planet's accumulated regularity created an environment in which the past was relevant to the future, the fundamental condition for any form of learning. The planet was no longer just alive. It was becoming intelligible. As Earth grew more intelligible, life began interacting with the planet in increasingly reflective ways. Organisms no longer responded only to immediate stimuli. They adapted to histories, anticipating change based on patterns learned over generations. Memory, in many forms, became an advantage written directly into biology. Genetic memory, behavioral memory, ecological memory, each operating on different timescales, but all depending on the same underlying planetary consistency. Ecosystems grew dense and interconnected, storing information in relationships rather than individuals alone. Forests altered climate locally. Reefs shaped currents. Grasslands influenced weather patterns. Life was no longer just reacting to Earth systems. It was participating in them, reinforcing the stability that made observation possible. The biosphere became a co-regulator of planetary conditions, and that co-regulation further stabilized the environment, creating a positive feedback loop between biological complexity and environmental reliability. This build-up marked the emotional peak of the planet's preparation. Earth had become a place where cause and effect stretched far enough apart to be noticed. Events could be compared. Outcomes could be remembered. The world was no longer a blur of reaction. It had become a narrative. The temporal distance between cause and effect, which patience had created, gave events a structure that could be perceived, analyzed, and understood. What made this moment fragile was its dependence on balance. Too much instability would erase memory. Too much rigidity would halt change. Earth maintained a narrow window where complexity could grow without collapsing. The planet was not just hosting observers. It was shaping the conditions that allowed observation to emerge. The balance between stability and change was itself the medium in which awareness could develop. This was a quiet threshold before awareness. No single species crossed it alone. It emerged from the planet's accumulated patience, structure, and endurance. Earth had created a world where looking back became possible. The surface had become a record. The present had become interpretable. And the future had become something that could be imagined. The climax of Earth's preparation was not the arrival of observers, but the moment the planet became observable. Its systems aligned in a way that allowed events to leave traces, patterns to persist, and causes to be linked to consequences across time. Earth became a world that could be understood from within. The legibility of the planet preceded the literacy of its inhabitants. The resolution lies in what this made inevitable. Once conditions allowed memory to accumulate, awareness was no longer a matter of chance, but time. Life would eventually notice cycles, recognize regularity, and reflect on its surroundings because the planet had made reflection possible. Observation was not imposed on Earth. It emerged from Earth's stability. The planet did not need to produce observers deliberately. It needed only to remain stable long enough a capacity for observation to develop naturally. This perspective reshapes the origin story entirely. The planet did not wait for intelligence to give it meaning. Meaning arose because Earth sustained coherence long enough for understanding to form. Observers did not create the story. They inherited it. What we call consciousness is not separate from this history. It is an extension of it, a continuation of Earth's long effort to preserve information against chaos. The ability to look back, to ask questions, to wonder how it all began, rests on billions of years of planetary restraint. Earth prepared for observers by becoming legible, by surviving without erasing itself, by turning motion into memory. Subscribe to join the journey. How